In today's lesson video, we're going to look at the written methods for subtracting, and we're going to look at that using the kind of content you'd find or expect in years 5 and 6. We're going to start by simply thinking about how we lay out our calculation. So the most important thing, like with the addition, is that we line our digits up over one another. So we need to have a good understanding of place value. We first need to check whether both numbers have the same amount of digits. And in both my numbers, I have 5 digits. I might also want to double check I know what the numbers are. So I might count in 3 from the end of each number and put a separator in. The separator tells me that I've separated my thousands from my 1. So I now know that I'm subtracting 42,582, subtract 31,411. It is important to engage with the number and not just write down the digits without thinking about it. So now I know they are 2 numbers with the same amount of digits. I can line them up over one another. So I'll simply write the digits out, making sure that I have a good amount of space between each one so that I can really clearly see. I might even put my separator in. And I pop my subtract symbol in so I don't get confused and add. Now in reality, if you're solving math problems, maybe in a test or a quiz, you may not be given lots of subtracting questions in one go. It may be that you're reading it from a word problem. So make sure you're checking, am I adding or subtracting, and write the symbol in, because honestly, it is really common to see people write the right numbers down from a word problem and then they don't write the subtract or the add symbol and they just do the wrong calculation. Or sometimes even halfway through a calculation, they'll switch between the methods of adding and subtracting because they are very different. So the layout is the same. We put the number that we're subtracting from at the top and the number we're subtracting at the bottom. One other key tip, don't swap your numbers round, okay? Don't do this. When you're adding, you can do that. And I see some children always putting the larger number at the top. It's not necessary with adding. You can put the numbers in either order, but I wouldn't swap them round because when you get to subtracting, you may get confused. So do not swap the numbers round. If I do 31,411, subtract 42,582, I'm not going to get the same answer. So make sure they're in the right place. Now I'm also going to label my place value headings. Again, this is not necessary, but I'm doing this to help you visualize. So I've got my ones, tens, hundreds, thousands and 10,000s. And then I'm always going to start from my ones or always start from the digit with the smallest value. I have no decimal numbers here, so my smallest value is the ones column. So I always start at the top as well. 2 subtract 1 is 1. So I start from the top and I take away the number underneath. So I'm starting with the 8 at the top. I'm subtracting 1 from my 8. I get to 7. Start with my 4. Start with my 5. Subtract the 4, I'm left with 1. I'm going to put my separator in. Start with my 2, subtract my 1, I have 1. Start with my 4, subtract my 3, I have 2. Now I have actually gone a bit wonky there, so try and keep your numbers in the right columns. How I've done this here, actually, it is a bit wonky, so make sure that you are but they are still separate. But it would be better if they were in nice straight columns. So your answer to that is 21,171. I've started with a relatively simple one, just so you can see how you lay out your calculation. So have a go at the first 3 questions on your worksheet. They are quite simple. Just make sure you get your layout correct. For our next question, we're taking it a step further with the complexity. So I'm going to write my digits in. I've already looked and I can see they are both 5-digit numbers. There are no decimals, so I know that all the digits are going to go just directly under one another. I'm going to quickly pop in my place value headings: 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. And I'm going to start subtracting. Remember, I always start from the smallest value, which is my ones. Now here, 3 subtract 6. I have to start with the 3 because it's at the top. What I see a lot of children do is automatically our brains can kind of compensate for us, sometimes without us noticing. Maybe you've read one of those puzzles where the words are back to front and then it asks you if you can read it and you are able to start reading it, or maybe you can sometimes read things that are upside down. Our brains are very smart and they can sometimes compensate for us and make things a bit easier for us. So it's very common for this 3 subtract 6, children will go, yeah, that's 3, 6 take away 3. I can't do 3 take away 6, so I'll do 6 take away 3. Very important with subtraction that you don't do that and you're aware that that might happen. So you have to be consciously aware. I can't subtract 6 from 3. So what I need to do here is to borrow. Okay, so I've only got 3 ones. I need to borrow, I'm going to borrow 10. So I'm going to borrow 10 from my 8, which is over in my tens column. So I've got 8 tens here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just borrow one. So I'm going to cross that out. If I'm going to borrow one, that's now only 7 tens in that column. And I'm going to bring my 10 over here. Now I only write the digit 1 from my 10 because 10 plus 3 makes 13. I've got 3 ones. I'm borrowing a 10. That would make this number now 13. Okay, so now I can do 13 take away 6, which is 7. Now at this point, if you can't do 13 take away 6 very quickly and you're finding you're having to count back on your fingers or find another strategy, then practice your number bonds to 20. There are loads of online games, number bonds to 20. They are usually aimed at younger children, but there are loads of children, even in key stage 3, that struggle with their number bonds and they don't practice them because they think, oh, that's a younger skill. It's not. Even adults will have forgotten some of these skills. So if you're finding that that's tricky, go and practice a number bond skill. Google it, number bonds to 20, number bonds to 50, or just keep practicing. It's something that you need to do often to be able to do it quickly. If you're able to do this quite quickly, then fantastic. Next one, 7 tens take away 2 tens. That's 5 tens. Go to my hundreds column. 2 hundreds take away 8 hundreds. Okay, again, I can't do it. The number at the bottom is larger than the number at the top. I can't subtract 8 hundreds from 2 hundreds. So I'm going to have to borrow. So I'm going to have to borrow. I always say borrow from your neighbour. So the hundreds neighbour is 1,000. I'm going to borrow 1,000 from my 1,000 column. So my 3,000 is now going to become 2,000. I always cross out the number I'm borrowing from and write the new amount in first. So my 3,000 is now 2,000. I can now bring my 1,000 over to my 100 column. So this is now 1,200. So I've brought my 1,000 over to join my 200s. I've now got 1,200. If we're just looking at it in our hundreds column, I can read that as a 12 and an 8, okay? Because it's 1,200 to take away 800. 12 take away 8 is 4. So it's 400. Back to my thousands column, 2,000 take away no thousands. It stays the same. It's still 2,000. I'm taking nothing away. This is another place where I see lots of common misconceptions where people can go wrong. Sometimes the 0 confuses them. Sometimes people will write 0 here. So just think about it logically. I've got 2. I'm taking away nothing. So I've still got 2 then. And I go to my 10,000 column. 5 take away 4 is 1. I'll put my separator in my number. My final answer is 12,457. So the next 3 questions on your worksheet, you have got numbers where you're going to have to borrow, exchange and carry over. So just make sure you line things up carefully. You think about whether the number at the top is bigger than the number below it. If it isn't, you need to borrow. Make sure that you cross out, put the new number in the column you're borrowing from before you bring it over to your number. Okay, have a go at those 3 questions now. Okay, now we're going to look at, just like in the addition video if you watched it, we're going to look at what happens when you calculate with numbers with different amounts of digits. Now, often people might look at a number like this and think, oh, that's easy, it's a nice small number that I'm subtracting from. But we can get errors when we don't lay out our numbers correctly. So if I put my first number in, what I sometimes see is this, because people don't pop the numbers in the right column. Okay, so if I was to do my place value headings, 1, 10, 100, 1,000 and 10,000, I can see that in my first number, the 3 is 30,000, the 6 is 1,000, the 2 is 100. I've got 36,261. But it's in my bottom number. If I was just to read it over here, I know it's 488. So that 4 is not worth 10,000. It's not 48,800. There's nothing here. I can't just pop placeholders in whole numbers. Okay, if I've got a whole number, I can't put placeholders in. I can do that with decimals. I cannot do that with whole numbers. I can't just pop those numbers in. That changes the number. So this number, 488, the 4 is worth 100. It goes in my hundreds column. The 8 is 8 tens and I've got 8 ones. So line them up in the right columns. And then we can subtract as we did before. 1 take away 8. 1 smaller than 8, I'm going to need to borrow a 10. So my 6 tens becomes 5 tens and I now have 11. 11 take away 8 is 3. I now move to my tens column. I can't do 5 take away 8. The number below is bigger. So I'm going to borrow from my hundreds column. My 200 becomes 100 and I can bring my 100 over. 15 take away 8 is 7. I go to my hundreds column. I can't subtract the 4 from the 1. So I need to borrow 1,000. I now have 5,000 instead of 6,000, and I now have 11 subtract 4, which is 7. Now here I have 5,000 and there's nothing to take away. There's not a 0 there, but it's the same thing, isn't it? I've got 5, there's nothing below it to subtract, so that stays the same. My 30,000, my 3 in the 10,000 column, there's nothing below it to take away, so it stays the same. I'll pop my separator in. My answer is 35,773. So for the next 3 questions, please make sure you're careful and you line up your digits in the correct place value column. If it helps you, write in the place value headings. So have a go at those 3 questions on your worksheet now. Finally, we're going to look at numbers with different places and also with decimals in. So different amounts of digits, and different decimal places too. So let me write the first number in because that's what I'm subtracting from. 672.68. Now I'm going to put my place value headings in now. Now I know where my 1 is because it's next to the decimal point. So I've got 1, 10 and 100. I've got my decimal point. I've got my tenth, which is worth a tenth, and I've got my hundredth, which is worth a hundredth. Okay, so I've written my place value headings in to guide me. I'm subtracting. Now my number has 3 numbers before the decimal point. So this is 400. This is a 1, a 10 and a 100. So I can write in 488.2. I have 2 tenths, I have no hundredths. I'm going to put my decimal point in my answer now as well. Now with numbers with decimals, you can put a placeholder in here. That does not change the value of my number. I could actually put loads of zeros in. It doesn't change the number. However, that's not useful doing that. These are not necessary. This 0 might be helpful for when I'm doing my first calculation. It's also not necessary, but I always encourage you to make all your numbers have the same decimal places because they're easier to compare, order, subtract. So let's start with the smallest value. In this calculation, the smallest value is our hundredths digits. So I'm going to start all the way over to the right, and I'm going to start with 8 hundredths, take away no hundredths. I'm still left with 8 hundredths. The 8 hundredths did not change. Now let's go to our tenths. 6 tenths, take away 2 tenths is 4 tenths. Now let's go to our ones. I can see the number below is larger than the number above, so I'm going to need to borrow. So I'm going to borrow 1 10 from my 7, so that's now 6, and bring it over to my 2. 12 take away 8 is 4. Now go to my tens. I can't do 6 take away 8, 8 is bigger. I'm going to borrow 1 from my hundreds column, so that's now 5 hundredths. And I'm going to bring my 1 over. 16 take away 8 is 8, and 500 take away 400 is 100. So any numbers you're subtracting, the key is to lay them out so that all the digits of the same value are above one another. They're in one column. Make sure you put the correct number at the top. Make sure you understand the value, the place value of each digit. If you struggle with place value, there is a place value lesson available that we did at the beginning of the week. So go and watch that if you're not too confident. So make sure they're all laid out in the correct columns. For decimals, you can put placeholders in, and remember that you can't subtract a number that's larger than the one above it. So make sure you then go and borrow, make sure you cross out, you remember to write down the new number, and off you go. So have a go at those 3 questions before the final challenge. In our pyramid, what happens is 2 cells add together to make the number above it. So these 2 numbers added together make this number. These 2 numbers added together make this number, and these 2 numbers added together make this number. So you've only got 3 answers there, and you're going to have to figure out what the missing cells are. Now the inverse of adding is subtracting. So if I want to know what this number is here, I know that this, and I could actually write it out for you. Question mark plus 3,280 equals 3,736.6. Okay, so with the inverse, I would be undoing. So can you see what I need to do? So I actually need to start with this number and subtract this number to get to this number. Okay, the inverse, the opposite of adding is subtracting. There is also a lesson available for free on our YouTube channel which talks about using the inverse, which helps you to look at how you find missing values. So that's what this is, a missing value problem. Now you could start here or you could start here, doesn't really matter where. I'm going to start at the top and work down. So this number, subtract this number, is going to give me this answer. So let's write it out. 11,373.1 take away. Now let's check our number. We have 4 digits before the decimal point. So this is 1,000. So 3,736.6. Remembering to line up your digits. So let's begin. I can't do 1 take away 6, I need to borrow. 11 take away 6 is 5. I can't do 2 take away 6, I need to borrow. 12 take away 6 is 6. 6 take away 3 is 3. I can't do 3 take away 7, I need to borrow. 13 take away 7 is 6. I can't do 0 take away 3, I need to borrow. And you can see when I borrow this 1, I'm left with nothing there, so that's now nothing. 10 take away 3 is 7, and I have nothing left. So my answer here is 7636.5. So I'm now going to do 3,000. So I'm now going to do 3,736.6 subtract 3280. Now remember I said earlier, when you are working with decimal numbers, you can put placeholders in here because they don't alter the value. 3,280.0 is the same as 3,280, but it might just help with your calculating. So 6 tenths take away no tenths is 6 tenths. Put my decimal place in. Very important. Remember your decimal place. 6 ones take away no ones is 6 ones. I can't do 3 tens take away 8 tens, so I borrow from my hundreds. 13 take away 8 is 5. 6 hundreds take away 2 hundreds is 4 hundreds. And 3,000 take away 3,000 is no thousands. Now I don't need to put my 0 in there, but you can do. When you write down your answer, don't put the 0 in. It's 456.6. So over on the other side, I've got 7,636.5. Subtract 3,280. I've made sure that my numbers, my digits are lined up correctly. Again, I have a decimal number in my top one, but not my bottom. So I'm just going to put in a placeholder there because I know that it doesn't change the value of my 3,280. 5 tenths take away no tenths is 5 tenths. Decimal point, very important. 6 ones take away no ones is 6. I can't do 300s take away 800, so I borrow from my thousands. 13 take away 8 is 5. 5 take away 2,000 is 3,000. 100 is 300, sorry. And 7,000 take away 3,000 is 4,000. So I have my final answer. So with your pyramids, have a go. Start from maybe the top and work your way down, but every time you find one clue by subtracting, you should be able to find the other clue. So remember, the one at the top, if you subtract one of the ones underneath it, it will give you the answer to the other one which is underneath it. So anywhere you have a question at the top, a number at the top, subtract one of the cells from underneath it and that will give you the answer to the other one. Okay, good luck with those. Have a go at those pyramids now on your worksheet. I hope you've learned something new today about laying out your digits correctly, about subtracting with numbers of different digits and subtracting with numbers with decimals. If you've enjoyed this lesson video, then please have a look at our website where you can sign up for access to loads more free resources to support maths learning in Key Stage 2. So that's years 3 to 6. I started doing these lesson videos in response to the school closure. We already have a Year 6 app on the market, but the years 3 to 4 and 5 are all being designed especially to help you with your homeschooling. So if you want to keep up to date with more resources as I make them, then check out the website and you'll be able to sign up at www.pocketprivatetutor.co.uk. We're also on Facebook and Instagram where I'm posting loads of different puzzles and tips and tricks that you can have a go at with your family at home. Hope you've enjoyed the lesson.